Right, hey guys, how are we doing? Back another video from Annie News, continuing with the cut content videos for Season 4. This is like the second half of Episode 7, I do believe, where he fought the dragons, and gotta say I was a bit disappointed with that. Like, it just shows how OP he is, but I do feel like the show is now slowly getting to a point where we're gonna start fighting people that are quite capable, but we'll wait until it covers that, especially Episode 9, oh my god. But let's check out the second half of what was missed from Episode 7. Ainz versus the Frost Dragon Lord.
There were 3 times this episode when Ainz had made someone's entire existence trivial.
Yeah.
The first was a cutscene involving the dwarves, the second his encounter with the dragons, then the third Shaltyr's subjugation of the Kuago.
Mate.
Since the first and third were covered last episode, we'll finish up Episode 7 with how Ainz versus the dragons went. A simple byproduct of his true goal to become friends with the dwarves, yet quite revealing with regards to how this superior race of monsters lived in the New World. So, just like how we did last time, let's take a look at what the anime left out from the novels. Let's get started. As I said in the last video, dragons are the most powerful race in the New World. These frost dragons may not have seemed like it, but in every type of environment there existed a type of dragon that had adapted to it.
Oh, right, cool.
So, in these ice-covered peaks of the Azerlesia Mountains, the frost dragons were the ones that ruled over it.
Makes sense. That's cool, I like that.
Partially. They were a breed of dragon possessing perfect immunity to chill, along with a bidding weakness to fire. Then, just like how you'd expect, their ultimate move was Icy Breath.
Oh, that's cool as well.
Now, an important thing to note about these dragons is that not all of them are equally powerful.
Right.
Where there existed regular dragons, there was also a superior version called a Dragon Lord. The most ancient type who were typically very powerful, or could at least use spells unique to them. That's how they were known to become the strongest. The younger dragons could find themselves defeated by many other monsters, but a Dragon Lord was the oldest type who exemplified their race's potential for unlimited growth. Only after sufficient time has passed, though, would a dragon have grown strong enough to become a Dragon Lord.
Right, okay.
And that's when they would find themselves at the top of the food chain. Now, this Frost Dragon Lord liked to consider himself an equal to them, but in comparison to someone like the Platinum Dragon Lord, he was actually nothing more than an insignificant weakling. He wasn't even strong enough to breach the vault doors the dwarves had created to protect their treasury. It was imbued with a protective spell that made any attacks against him useless.
Oh, okay, that's also cool. Why is this stuff not getting mentioned?
The only thing this Dragon Lord thought wasn't of how he was potentially in danger, but instead of how they could potentially open the door for him. If the dwarves brought with them more benefit than the Kuagoa, then Olisard had no problem in tossing his old minions aside for them. He was only concerned with adding more riches to his
Gold. Dragons love gold.
Plus, with a more useful type of minion who could bring significant advancement, Olisard believed it could be the first step to achieving his true dream. You see, the whole reason he had even taken the Dwarven capital in the first place was also he could amass the strength to take on the Frost Giants. By creating a nest where his children could grow into powerful dragons, eventually he'd have enough of them to defeat the enemy contesting his territory.
Right.
As it was now, though, the Frost Giants and their inherent immunity to chill really made fighting against them quite the hassle. Without any sort of method to apply sustainable damage, Olisard and all his other dragons would just be flying around waiting to get swung down by them. Thus the reason the two were locked in a power struggle. The giants weren't strong enough to completely wipe out the dragons, but at the same time the dragons couldn't do so either.
So,
it was a
right.
delicate balance in which either side was
stalemate, as you could call it.
to strike the other. Of course, with Ainz right around the corner, the biggest threat was the one already right in front of them, one in which the most astute was sent to take care of. When Olisard had gone to get him, though, the whole scene was intended to be a parody of a strict parent kicking out their shut-in son.
Yeah.
I mean, not only was Hegemal obese to the point that his father thought pathetic, but the entire conversation ended with Olisard saying he was kicking him out.
Oh god, kicking him out completely.
It was the equivalent of him being told to go out and to do something with his life. A couple interesting things to note prior to this, though, was the interest in magic Hegemal seemed to possess, along with the core difference of opinion that saved his life. As the type of person who sought knowledge, it was only natural for Hegemal to be interested in magic.
Definitely, no, that makes sense, yeah.
He's
a nerd, he's got glasses.
Skills. A little self-study never hurt to see if he could awaken something. It certainly wasn't anything extremely impressive, but there were Dragon Lords who were known to be capable of various types of magic. There was even one who became a holy knight and learned multiple different spells.
Cool.
Now, the difference of opinion that allowed Hegemal to live was the cautious nature he took when approaching the unknown. Sure, he did have a desire to explore the world, but not before first knowing what to expect from it.
Yeah.
Unless he was
Safety in knowledge.
once he was out there, he wasn't willing to leave his room yet. And that was the core principle his father simply couldn't understand. Whereas Hejinmal liked to be prepared, Olisard operated under the assumption that if you were the strongest, you were always prepared. It didn't matter who or what you came across, since so long as you had strength, you'd always find a way to overcome it. So, after telling his son to handle the visitors then leave the castle, Hejinmal seriously considered just running away.
Just leaving, not bothering. Yeah, makes sense.
He was just going to get kicked out anyway.
Yeah, like, what's the point if I'm just going to get booted? Alright, yeah.
Was nice enough to give him a month to prepare himself. Time he definitely felt he needed to get his things in order. So, that being the case, Hejinmal knew his best option was to deal with the dwarves. At least that way he could scare them off or try to negotiate something. When he saw it was an elder lich that he was dealing with instead, though, that's when Hejinmal knew that he couldn't do anything. His chill breath trump card was instantly negated, and his fire were sure to be taken advantage of. What solidified this position even more was his innate sense, which gave him an idea of how valuable things were. When looking at Aura, Shaltir, and Ainz, one glance was all he needed to know everything they were wearing was more valuable than anything he'd ever seen before.
Right.
Much to the point he thought
so he acknowledged the importance straight away.
Luckily for him, his hopes that this was an undead willing to negotiate was the actual way things turned out for him. As for the way Ainz saw it, though, he was rather disappointed by the fact only one dragon was sent to face him. His cautious mind did contemplate
it's like, come on, send your whole goddamn army.
The lack of sense it made to him made him think he was just being overcautious for once. It was the mindset that led him to disregard all caution and just approach the dragon head-on. As soon as Hejinmal realized he was outmatched, his mind immediately began to recount all the information he'd read about undead. Specifically the fact how, though it was unlikely for an undead to be stronger than a dragon, there were several legendary undead who could prove it.
Right.
The Soul Eaters were a prime example, along with the Undead Dragon and the Astral Reapers.
Whoa,
Each
what
were
are they?
Undead who could easily give a Dragon Lord a run for their money.
Yo, they look sick.
So, assuming that this Elder Lich was one of them, Hejinmal knew the safest thing to do was to just submit to him, resulting in a brief interrogation pertaining to the strength of the other dragons. As it turns out, the max tier spell any of them could cast was 3, of which Olisard only knew a total of 3. This was a rather difficult thing for Ainz to believe, but when he had questioned whether this was a bluff or not, the response from Hejinmal pretty much confirmed it.
Right.
In fact, the 8th tier spells Ainz believed them to be actually capable of was a level of magic Hejinmal didn't even know to exist.
Oh god.
Just the very mention of it had led Hejinmal to believe Ainz was...
So these dragons have been built up to be completely something else that they're just not.
The move she used to tame him was something akin to bloodlust. It was the instillment of a presence so intensely murderous that the very exposure to it had almost frightened him to death. Like, literally. The
He did
absolute
pee
shock
himself.
of the fear she let out had stopped his heart for a bit. So much so that it didn't even want to start beating again. Once he came back to and realized he was alive, though, the dramatic shift from being so tense to extremely relaxed was the actual reason for that little accident of his. The part about him being happy was just him trying to make an excuse for it. When we get to the royal chambers next, despite Gondo having made a plea for Hejinmal's mother, it wasn't something he was extremely concerned about. It's not like he had anything against them, but it was more so just that dragons didn't have strong bonds between relatives.
Okay.
Their independent nature, along
He
with
does admit, though, that he has 3 mothers,
territory,
doesn't he?
often led to
Probably,
dragons in the
yeah,
same family competing with each other. That being the case, a mass group of them like how we see here was extremely rare unless a much stronger dragon had gathered them together. Only in specific situations like to fight against the frost giants were a group of dragons ever found cooperating like this. Now, while most of the events in the chamber were pretty much the same, Olisard and the others had actually noticed something peculiar about Ainz. You see, just like how Hejinmal had done so earlier, their natural sense to assess treasure immediately dictated that Ainz's clothing was actually quite valuable. So, while 3 of the 4 dragons were captivated by its worth, only one realized they might be in a bit of trouble. But it was before
Too captivated on the items of clothing.
Olisard demanded Ainz give up his clothing to him. If he left his robes then gave up willingly, Olisard said he would consider allowing Ainz to be forgiven by him.
Oh dear.
Of course, just like we saw, it really was only a brief moment that Ainz had spent taking care of him. One minute he was alive, then the next his corpse being tossed through a gate straight to Nazarick. Ainz had ordered Yuri Alpha to keep it frozen on the 5th level until further notice.
Oh, class. Why didn't we see that?
Ainz would summon his trusted 8-edged assassins, then have them scour the castle and search for any hidden dwarven knowledge. All books were to be bound and brought directly to him. regards to the dwarven treasury after, the very idea of opening a vault not knowing what was behind it brought with it the same feelings of excitement he had felt in Yggdrasil. The fun that came from opening a drop in the form of a treasure was always something Ainz had gotten a thrill out of. So, in order to ensure that experience went unhindered, Ainz brought out a magic item that worked like a lockpick. It was an artifact that had picking abilities on
Oh yeah, he used that in the... Oh yeah.
He would have preferred not to have to use it here, but since
Because it only gets, what, 8 uses? 2, 4, 5, 6, 7.
There wasn't a single person
7
capable
uses.
of opening this door for him. As for what was in it, well, aside from gold that came from a human nation the dwarves had once partnered with, there was also a single longsword which stood out as the most enchanted item in the entire collection. It was only about as powerful as level 50, but the amount of mana it possessed was actually quite impressive, especially since it was an item that originated from the New World. What made it even more impressive, though, was the fact that this was a sword Ainz could actually wield properly. You see, as a caster focused more on magic, his build didn't usually allow him to use high-level melee weapons that way. But as a sword that visibly resonated with his mana, Ainz could only assume it was more of a magic sword. That still didn't make it any more useful to him, but it was something that he found a bit interesting. But yeah, that was how Ainz vs. the Dragons went. When you really think about all that had happened, though, this whole string of subjugation was really only a byproduct of his true goal. The goal to create a diplomatic alliance with the dwarves. And the reason he wanted that was mainly so he could gather 3 crucial pieces of information. The first was to confirm the presence of any players, the second to learn about the runes and their history, then the third was to gain knowledge on their blacksmithing and the ore used while practicing it. Since number 1 and 3 were pretty much done, the only thing left was to investigate the runes a bit more, a topic he would pursue a bit more before returning to Nazarick. So, now that this arc is done, we can finally move on to the third and final one. A new volume that focuses on one of the most interesting conflicts yet. Until then, though, be sure to subscribe so you know when the next video's out. Then feel free to check out the Succubate apparel if you already haven't. But anyway, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then you already know what to do. So, until next time, ciao!
Very cool. Always cool to see the stuff that's been left out. It's cool that he's kept the dragon and it's being kept frozen so he can investigate it and that. That's really, really cool. He just has a Dragon Lord corpse. And that was cool to learn about the elemental things as well. Like, I just assumed they would breathe fire, but like, so depending on the environment, depends on. That's cool. Anyway, thank you to my patrons. If you want to have your name at the end of every video I upload, links in the description to the Patreon page. $1 or more is less. I'll support the channel. It's greatly appreciated. Thank you guys very much for that. And thank you all for watching. What do you guys think of that? What do you guys think of this? Click like, subscribe, and leave comments down below. Let me know what I should want to discuss in future videos. And I'll see you guys all you guys